we'll take our first question here before we jump into the technical questions, because Karen asked a professional development one. She says, if you had a choice between getting paid the same amount of money to do either A, close to no work at all and it's not your role, or B, working on issues and solving problems inside your role, which would you do?
Oh, I would do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would get paid the same amount to do absolutely nothing. Yeah. I would find hobbies, or I would spend more time with my hobbies. Yeah. With the wife and kid, and I would just hang out.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Richie? I think Richie worked on fixing his internet.
Yeah, probably. You know what? I'd actually get two providers in, so when one goes haywire, I'd have the other one.
I bet I know what your answer is, though. Here, go ahead, because I know what your answer is to this. I think.
No, you tell me, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. That's good.
I think you would rather work on issues and solve problems because you're a workaholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because Lucy said, "Did you fix what you were on yesterday?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was so awesome, and it came out, and it all worked, and all this other stuff." And she's like, "Well, what are you working on?" "Oh, I have so many other problems that need to be fixed, and all this other stuff." So yeah, I mean, there's just some satisfaction in it, even if it's a small problem. It's like, oh, but it works, and it's so much nicer now, and it's so much more robust, and there's just satisfaction, and then all of a sudden that goes away, and it's like, okay, what's the next problem? And you kind of just jump on the next.
I think you're probably lying too, because you probably go back to working within the next hour or two. I think out of the three of us, I would be the most likely to take number one, do no work at all, but mostly because it would, like, if there's a way that I could figure out how to do stuff for free for people in the meantime, like if I could say to the company, look, here's the deal, I'm going to build this thing and give it away. It won't make sense now, but it might make sense later. But otherwise, yeah, if I'm getting paid, I kind of want to go, I don't know, I'm torn. But I hate being bored. And if I'm going to go be bored, I'm going to go retire. I was going to drop swear bombs.
Please don't retire, Brent, because then the rest of us retire too. So that wouldn't be good. I'm not ready to retire yet.
All right, let's see here. We'll get started with Michael says, have either of you installed or configured SQL Server 2017 CTP, like the community previews of SQL Server 2017? Any initial thoughts or impressions?
He has a follow-up down there. It says the Ment. Same name.
Oh, have you done it on Linux? Oh, God. Oh. Oh, that changes everything. I liked your original question better.
Yeah. That one I could hang out with, this Linux.
So why haven't you?
I'm just not a Linux guy. I feel like I would not learn anything that I want to learn by installing SQL Server on Linux. I've used Linux before. I've installed it. I tried to install Arch Linux once. It didn't go well. I'm not a fan of just all the weird command line stuff you have to do on Linux. And doesn't do it for me.
How about you?
Not want to spend time fixing that.
Yeah. Richie, how about you? Have you got out of your array of laptops, do you got any VMs that are running Linux or any ones running Linux bare metal?
No. I mean, I've got plenty of other stuff in the cloud that are running stuff, but everything I can run on Windows. And it's not really about the OS at that point. It's about the language and the application for me. And the question for me is SQL Server on Linux is why, right? So is there a reason for you running Linux SQL Server, this brand new product essentially from the ground up? And if the answer is because that's the only knowledge we have is Linux, I'd be like, well, why not Postgres, right? Why not MySQL? Why not MariaDB, right? Why not some of these other relations that are open source?
Don't play those games, Richard.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Let's see here. So next up, we'll take Greg says, what's the recommendation on enabling receive-side scaling on both servers and VM network adapters? This is VMware. I've got SQL Server 2008 R2. If you're playing around with receive-side scaling, make sure you Google for receive-side scaling and SQL Server and VMware, because there was a huge bug that performance just died with SQL Server, which I should have remembered on that client the other day. But I don't know what the symptoms are or anything like that. I just remember reading the blog post and going, holy! I've never had a problem that I went back and went, this is the answer here, receive side scaling. But I would also argue that most of the problems that I run into are either CPU and memory, that they surface bigger that way and it's easier to play around with indexes. I have no problem with receive side scaling. I just haven't used it to solve the problem yet. Let's see, Michela asks, I'm just going to pronounce your name different every single time. So this time I'll say Michela. Michela asks, why do Excel queries seem to use more CPU and memory than the same query in Management Studio? That's a great question. Which one of you wants to answer? No, come on. So there's the same post that we, Michela says, got my name right. So it is maybe Michela. Maybe I got that right. So my thing would be probably parameter sniffing. So there's this thing called slow in the app, fast in SSMS. And you know what's funny? Somebody said the other week, why don't you guys show the blog post up when you're talking about it? You know, like it made a huge difference with them with office hours. And you know what? That's exactly what I'll do. So if you search for slow in the app, fast in SSMS, if you want for bonus points, if you want to spell Erland Summerstod's name out, you totally don't have to. But this thing is an epic monster post. It's huge. It has a table of contents, and it lists out the different things that can cause your query to be slow in one app and then fast in another, and vice versa. So that's the place where I would start, is looking at the two different execution plans on them and see if you can get them to be the same just by blowing the plan cache, using the techniques that he shows inside of there. But otherwise, it shouldn't make a difference. Oh, no, that's not true. Okay, so there's one other scenario where it could make a difference. Let's say that your Excel user is in like Tijuana and your SQL Server is in Alaska. You know, whatever the network pipe is across there, if you're facing async network I/O waits, meaning it's taking a long time to push the data across the wire.
It's asking pretty specifically, why does Excel use more CPU and memory?
Oh, that's true.
Management Studio. So it seems like they're hitting some sort of resource like there. I'd be curious about what they're actually pulling.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
how many rows?
Well, you know, just because I for a very short time, gave project managers access to SQL Server via Access because they were incapable of
mastering
getting it any other way.
Yeah.
So I would just set up access to the data provider to SQL Server, and they would be off to their tracks, looking at their various reports and stuff. And writing access queries is awful.
It is.
So even if you're hooking it into SQL Server, it's not fun. So I would want to know what's going on with Excel. Why Excel is the choice for expressing the data.
And then if you want to share, if you can share the execution plan to see what the differences are between the SSMS query and the Excel query, there's this tool that Richie built, Paste the Plan. So if you go to pastetheplan.com, Richie, tell them what they've won.
You've won a website that will actually format the crap for you. Actually, no, that's another website. Oh my gosh, you just got me all mixed up with the different websites. No, this will actually, you paste in your XML and it will then give you a link, and then with that link you could share that with other people. I went statistics parser on you. Oh my gosh.
It went totally different. So it gives you it shows the plan. This one's not a good example because it's a where condition, but you can see examples of other people.
Actually, we'll have a release here pretty soon that will remove that and will format all that cursory stuff. They will actually show you the plan for all that.
Don't you go breaking my heart. That sounds amazing. I want this. Let's see here. Oh, and Michela asks, it says, report people love Excel and charts.
There you go.
I'm with them on that.
You use a graph database.
A graph database. Oh, that's good. Wes says, I'm writing a back-end database for a coworker, moving things from Access to SQL Server. I have it in perfect voice cod normal form, and he wants to make changes to break data integrity and normalization. What's the best way to push back? Richie, that's got you written all over it.
You could roll up tables for that. I mean, if you're against it, I'm not one of these guys where it says that everything needs to be in perfect third normal form or fourth or fifth normal form. I'm one you go to third, and if your performance or your needs need to back off and denormalize, then go ahead and denormalize it. It depends on the scenario that you need. And the normal forms were primarily to kind of save disk space, because disk space was extremely expensive back in the day. We don't really have that problem now. So if you need to have some sort of roll-up tables or reporting tables that the data is duplicated, or you actually break out into second normal form on some of your tables, I think that's perfectly fine. You just need to take a look and say, okay, well, what's our options between to fix this problem in the application? And if it means we denormalize for speed, then you denormalize. I mean, that's just the way I look at it.
He might get excited by views too. If he wants to pull data out more easily, you can write him some views to do easier queries.
Louis Davidson's book.
I was scared I should have said that. Yeah. We'll pull that up. Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah, the cool thing about Louis Davidson's book is that when I was initially reading it, I didn't know Louis at all. I had never met him. And I had a question about the book. And so I tweeted him the question about the book as I was reading it, and we started having a conversation about whatever question I had in real time over Twitter while I'm reading the book.
And I got to think that most authors are probably excited to do that too, because it's like, oh my God, someone's actually reading my book.
People pay you all the attention back.
Yeah. And hopefully you didn't tell them you downloaded it off of BitTorrent. And that's always heartbreaking for authors.
Yeah, this guy Brent Ozar just sent me a PDF. I don't know where I got it from. It's crazy.
Well, yes, he's got a few of those in there. The most recent one, the very one on the top of the list, is the newest one. You don't need the older versions, but
I bought the newer version. It's an interesting read. There was some good stuff in there. There was about storing names that even I thought was interesting. As someone who used to store a crap ton of names, never thought of. And when I read it, I was like, oh, that's so good. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I would ruin it. No spoilers from me.
If you're the kind of person who likes saying the name voice code, normal form, stuff like that, you'll probably enjoy this book.
Absolutely.
And too, folks, if you have questions, feel free to put your questions in as we go, just first come, first serve. If you get them in now, we'll likely get to them before the end of the session. Whereas if you wait at the end, we'll close the session and be like, later, we'll see you next week.
There was another book that I used to go to all the time. It was it was data model design patterns, and there was like 3 volumes of this thing. The cool thing about that book is that it had different verticals. So if you're in healthcare, it gave you a bunch of models for that. If you were in certain order taking type stuff, it gave you certain patterns for that. That was pretty awesome. I'll see if I could find the title of it, and I'll put it into the chat window.
Oh, good. Yeah, because I did nothing. There's a few in there. Oh, there's a volume 3, data model resource book.
I got to look it up. It's usually in the top of my head, but because I'm on the spot and the book is in the library, I've got to. It's not here. It's over there somewhere.
Gotcha.
Behind my wall.
Behind my wall. Behind door number 1. JH says, will creating a stored proc with begin and end, will that roll back a user changing their own password if it succeeds? Oh my goodness. So you're trying to do a transaction across multiple servers through linked servers probably in one stored proc changing passwords? I can't imagine that's going to get honored.
No, just begin and end isn't the app for that. I think you would have to do some sort of explicit begin tran.
Yeah, well, even beyond that, what I would do is I'd like to create a table of here's all the servers I got to change. Shucks, I'm going to need their password. Yeah, that doesn't work. Have you heard of Windows logins?
Yeah, that'll solve a much bigger problem for you.
Yeah. Or just do all the changes on just one server and then take the logins from there and replicate it out to others.
You know what I would do? I would use a registered server query for that. I would use registered servers, because that way you can have one. You can put all your servers that you need to change the password on into a group. You can open up one doodad and do all your password changes from one place.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, it doesn't work for a stored procedure, but
yeah, but if it's just like changing a login, I like that a lot. So if you search for either registered servers or a central management server, it just lets you execute queries across lots of servers. They may fail on one.
Yeah.
You know, it may still fail on one times out, whatever, but then at least you'll know which one it was and you can go retry it.
Would agent jobs be a good fit for that? Like if you had an agent job that linked to other servers?
The problem I worry about is if someone's changing their password, this has got to be like a parameter for the stored proc. And if you're going to go retry it, you're going to write it to a database somewhere. And I'm like,
yeah, because you're executing a stored procedure with someone, then that's in the plan cache maybe.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh,
that
that's
gets compiled with.
awful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Weird stuff could go on with that. I don't know
Yeah,
if
don't do that. So it's, if you want to sync logins across multiple servers, Robert Davis sync logins. Robert Davis wrote the book literally on database mirroring, and so he's got scripts out there on how to copy your logins to a database mirror. The same trick works for even just standalone SQL servers. Let's see what we got next here. Let's see. Deborah says, is it better to have nested roles or assign many roles to users?
it's much better to have an empty nest.
Yeah. So much more peaceful. Yeah, says the guy with kids, and or the guy with a toddler, and then Richie has
Richie laughed, that's why. Princess
10 more years, they go to college. Yeah.
Scram.
You're going to be so lonely. I don't think any of us have an opinion on that one.
No, we don't have a lot of security opinions in general.
So
Do security. That's my opinion. You do security.
yeah, someone else do security.
Yep.
Book Securing SQL Server by Denny Cherry. It's now in, I think it's 3rd edition. So just check to make sure you're getting the most recent version. Yeah, 3rd edition. It's normally I say SQL Server or a security book, and people are like, whoa, this is great. It's really well written. It's fun to read. It's an easy, enjoyable, digestible read. So, and if you know Denny Cherry, you'll think that someone else probably wrote it because there's not a typo in the book as far as I remember seeing. It's really nice and cleanly spelled. I kid because I love Denny. He's wonderful.
No, you kid because it's kind of true.
It is completely true. Yes, when Denny said his wedding vows to his wife, he couldn't even get I do correctly. It's like, yeah.
Do I?
See?
Do we?
Wes Palmer says, have you ever used the hierarchical data type? What are your views on it? We just had a client question on that.
Yeah, it's okay.
There's a ringing endorsement.
It's okay. It does solve the hierarchical problem pretty well. There are some great articles out there that I think are much better choices. Jeff Moden over on SQL Server Central has some cool hierarchies on steroids articles where he goes through how to calculate left and right bowers and traverse trees. And then Adam Mechanic has a really good one using CTEs and some crazy CLR code that he wrote. And that was a good read. And funny thing about that article was one of my first blog posts when I was on your site was about just a simple thing about common table expressions and like how if you join a common table expression, it re-executes the syntax, blah, blah, blah. And there's a comment on it from Adam because this monster dropped like the same day or the day after, the day before. And he left a comment on my post. It's like, oh, I guess you both blogged about CTEs this week. And I was like, yeah, I guess.
I was so proud.
I guess.
And then he does his big monster post, of course.
And so he does a lot of cool stuff. And kind of saying with the same author, the T-SQL querying book that him and Isaac and all those guys has a pretty good chunk of space dedicated to hierarchies in there as well. So those I would explore those choices before committing to the hierarchy ID type, just because it can be a little bit more clean, and you don't have to have all those crazy functions in there. I've seen not CLR waits, but weird sleep task waits. They can kind of dominate query execution when you're waiting on those hierarchy IDs and parent of and whatever to calculate and come back and forth.
Just saw that recently.
Yeah, with everything, I think I say this every week, but test it. Just go ahead, try one, try the other, test it, write a CTE. I've written a ton of recursive CTEs. It's it's really, if you know what you're doing, you can get it to be fairly fast. just go ahead and try it. Just go test it, and you see what works in your environment.
The one thing that I will say is cool about the hierarchy ID type is that the functions that you can use on that to like calculate parents and stuff, you can make computed columns from those and index those, so you can help yourself out a little bit in those situations.
Yeah.
Nice.
Where that's a little bit harder to do and persist with a like recursive CTE.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it really depends what you're doing the hierarchies from. I mean, you could actually pre-build your trees and kind of do that if you're not going to touch it very much. But if your trees are always kind of moving in flex, and if you kind of want to go from one node down to another one or move up, and there's a ton of stuff that you could do with the tree, but do you need to do those things with the tree is really the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played around with it a little bit just using the Stack Overflow database because in the host table, there's this parent of, and then the comments table, you can track that back. So you can make these like kind of cool lists of, here's like, the initial question, here are answers to the question, here are comments to the answers. Yeah. So you can do kind of cool stuff like that.
Sum up like total score for a question.
Yeah,
Comments and children.
Yeah.
Let's see, Jackie says, I bought your online everything classes and looking forward to getting to review them. Hope to learn a lot. Awesome, cool. I hope you learn a lot as well. Eric's been adding performance classes too in there, added some new T-SQL classes.
Yeah. I'm going to start rolling out some of the triage stuff. The
SP Blitz.
Closer to DBA stuff than performance stuff.
Okay.
Sort of some DBA fundamentals work.
James says your level T-SQL level up, level 2 was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
That's cool.
You're the one who watched it. I didn't give my mom a login because I didn't want her to be that one view. So thank you for being the one.
Skewing the numbers.
Mom hitting there at 5.
Come on, son, I'm going to get you to be trending on YouTube.
Since I was on a retired teacher's mailing list. Here's the login.
Next thing you know, database administrators. Dorian says, are there any good apps or scripts that can automate database restores for testing and development?
Yeah. So Quest Lightspeed
now.
Yeah, it's awesome for that. They have a crap ton of automation built in. They even have a really cool one that Jason Hall was telling us about at DBA Days, where they automate the backup, restore, check DB, and drop of databases to a secondary server if you want to get really crazy and offload your check DB somewhere else. It is a really cool product with a lot of good stuff built into it.
People often say, does anyone still buy backup utilities? What's the use now that compression is in the product? And there's stuff like that, adaptive compression, wizards for log shipping are better, and they have cool extended store procedures you can call for log shipping, some neat stuff.
They also, the stuff that always blows me away about Lightspeed though is, not to get too product endorsing on it, but you can do object level restores, you can restore a table. They're really good at reading, you can read through the logs to a certain point behind the transaction you want. So like if you have the log backups every 15 minutes, you need to restore to a point within a log backup, it makes it dead simple to bring you to the 7, 8, 9 minute mark to a certain transaction. Like the stuff that, the DBA rescue stuff that you're like, if you had to do that on your own at 3 a.m., you'd be floored.
So I have a question about that question.
Go ahead.
Why are we restoring production to test? Why are we restoring to dev? Our dev and test environments should be something completely different so that the developers can test not just the 80% case that is typically in production, but the case that is kind of out there that usually doesn't happen when I got data kind of all messed up. So our test databases need to be different than production, and our development databases need to be different than test. So I've never been a fan of just restoring production into test and calling that a good test, because typically you're going to get the same thing in production and not the oddball wackadoo problems that we need to be testing in test.
But production's a good thing to base that on. If you restore production data, you can then mangle that in some way to get your edge cases in, or you can, do some scrubbing.
You can sell it to the Chinese.
Yeah. Russians.
At that point, put it into a staged environment and test your deployment that way. You should have certain unit test cases. Yeah, you should have certain test cases be testing out your tests in a test environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. And you should, dear readers, also know that we will often advocate for things we don't do here. So like I think our yeah, our dev databases actually are different here in this case.
They're all Stack Overflow.
They're all Stack. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was if you minion CheckDB, if you're the kind of shop where you can't buy tools and you're doing the restores in order to offload CheckDB, the Minionware folks have this free tool out called Minion CheckDB. And this is so neat to me because they built in all this load balancing, and they've also built in a pop-up that I can't seem to close. Okay, hold on. Let me try and widen it.
Oh, there it goes. You got it.
There we go. So this thing will let you kind of round robin your CheckDBs. If you only have one server to do restores, it'll restore different production boxes each day. This isn't the kind of like Lightspeed has a GUI, click through things and a wizard. This isn't that. You're going to be 100% table driven here, so it's just more work, but it has a whole lot of cool capabilities. All right, let's see. Next one, Ronnie says, based on your experience in the field, do you think it's necessary to start learning Azure or support cloud databases to do backups restores? Is that the direction of the big money jobs, or is that a specialty skill set? Well, we should do a round robin. So
you should learn R. I don't know.
Oh yeah, sure.
No, it's all. I think it's always worth it to know this stuff and be prepared if someone wants you to start doing it. But if would I make that my primary job focus? Probably not. Just looking at specifically Azure adoption rates, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's where like the big money. You could probably find some niche work in it. I don't think you're going to find the end of your career in it.
And so we should explain that because the other people out there are probably like, is everyone doing Azure? So the work that you do out of there, what percentage of the work is like normal on-premises versus Azure versus AWS?
Oh, I think I've worked on maybe one or two Azure boxes in my time consulting with you. I've worked on a ton of AWS boxes. Mm-hmm. I haven't hit a Google Cloud box yet, aside from when we did the white paper work. But the majority is on-prem and on-prem virtualized.
Richie, how about you?
I've kind of never been a fan of learning all these knowledge, any knowledge, without an understanding of where you want to go with it, right? So if you don't have a plan of what I'm going to do with this cloud knowledge, and it's probably going to be wasted time and wasted knowledge. I've always preferred a kind of multi-step approach to learning knowledge. I want to be able to know enough about the cloud so I can have an intelligent conversation about it, and maybe not necessarily how to implement it. And if I get into a gig where I need to implement it, then I'm going to take that next step and know a little bit more on how it actually works and maybe how to implement it and what the nuts and bolts are. And then maybe after that, I take another step to where I'm actually teaching about it, where I'm really intimate with the product, and then I can kind of show others how to do it. So is the second part of your question is, well, is the jobs going to the cloud? Kind of. Maybe. I think a lot of companies. I think a lot of companies are struggling with that question, especially we got CIOs saying we got to go to cloud because we're going to save all this money, and that's kind of really out for debate about what you're trying to do in the cloud. I think those companies that are doing greenfield development in the cloud are saving money, and those that are putting legacy stuff into the cloud are probably not saving as much. That's just kind of my gut feeling for it. And the whole Azure versus AWS thing, I try to be agnostic, but I do a ton of Amazon work here, and I kind of really learned to love it. And as a Microsoft geek, and I've learned 20 years of my career has all been at Microsoft, I kind of feel bad about that. But then I yell at the Microsoft PMs and say, in Azure, and I just say, make it better, because this is what AWS does, and now make this better. And it kind of makes me feel good that I've actually, unloaded stuff off my chest and say, Microsoft, you need to be more like AWS, because I don't know what Azure does, because it does like 4 or 5 different things, but it's the exact same thing.
I think one other thing you're going to run into is if you, say you spend the next 3 to 6 months and you learn a whole bunch of Azure stuff, and then you put it down and you come back to it a year and a half later, or even 6 months later, a lot of what might not be all that relevant. It probably won't be as true as it was when you were using it. It just changes so fast.
It's totally going to change. And here's a perfect example. So Lambda, when it was first released, and it was only released, Brent, 2 years ago? Not even that? Yeah, so when it was first released, it had, there was a certain way you needed to go and end a function, right? And the way that you would end a function, you had to call certain things and it's done. And that is still in the documentation because it technically still works. But now they have a new way of doing it. Essentially, you call a callback and it's done. And that old way is now essentially saying we're deprecating it. It works, but at some point we're going to pull it. And, you know, if you kind of knew that and then you came to it now and you start writing this old way, and then a few months later, they actually pull it out of the product. And then you're like, oh, well, one, what happened? And two, how does it actually work now? And three, oh boy, that was way behind the curve. Or even worse, you come back to it a year later and it doesn't even work. So it's just, there's so many.
And then their app stopped working because you wrote the function.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no.
It's so crazy on how the cloud is just constantly changing. It is maddening. And then you get into an environment like JavaScript that is also constantly changing as well. It's a moving target on moving target, and you know, trying to say that this is where we're going to be for the next 5-10 years. It's not going to happen. This isn't like we're writing COBOL code and it's not going to change for 30 years. It's a whole different animal.
Mhm. Yeah, I would concur, especially that, you don't want to waste your time learning something you're not using. Literally, we wrote the Google white papers. They're out of date within like 3-4 months. Things start changing.
Yeah.
I did an Amazon or an Azure blog post about all the stuff around backup speeds. It's going to be out of date within a short number, a couple of months.
Yeah.
So it just changes so
Like a lot of the stuff that I wrote in the Perf white paper is now not exactly true anymore because they decouple memory and CPUs from being tied together. Like you can only have X amount of gigs per CPU, and it has to even out, and you have to need more CPUs, more RAM, and so I got to go back and revisit that.
You asked one thing that was interesting with it. Is that the direction of the big money jobs? It's always supply and demand. So when there's a huge demand and low supply, all of a sudden those people will be raking in the big bucks, but it may not be for a long period of time. So for example, R and Python right now, there's a huge demand. There's very little supply. Those people are raking in the bucks right now. That will change as more R and Python people just simply come out of college because those technologies are free.
Yep. I mean, that was true with Hadoop too, right? A couple years ago. And now where's Hadoop? I mean, you don't hear about it anymore.
We blogged about it. I mean, like Jeremiah was doing Hadoop work and really quickly realized that, oh my God, all these college kids are coming in and they're making, $25, $30 an hour. Why would you want to compete with that? It's a bad direction. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week at Office Hours, and we will see you guys next week.
Adios.